Hello there friends! Today I want to share with you the way I learned to code and make games in about 2 weeks using mostly YouTube videos. Oh, and of course, as promised on our last video, I will show you how I made my very first game. Let's go! So usually, in order to become an indie game dev, you need 2 main things. One would be to know how to code, and the other would be a system called a game engine that will make use of your code. Think of it like this. The game engine is some kind of a metaphorical reality. It has its own rules, like its own physics for example, and an interface that allows you to design and populate that reality. For example, I will use the engine to add the floor and the main character, and I will write a small piece of code to tell the engine that if the player presses the spacebar, I want you to make the character jump. There's lots more to what a game engine is and does, but you get the general idea, right? The coding language we're going to be learning is C#, and our game engine will be Unity. I downloaded Visual Studio, the software we will write our code in, and straight away I could do this. Okay, I might actually have to study after all. So at first I simply watched a course made by Mike Dane on the basics of coding with C#. You know, just to get a basic idea of all the concepts and stuff. The following day I rewatched the whole thing again, but this time around I replicated everything I saw in it. Now, by the end of the copying session I did have a rough idea of how to code, but in order to really solidify everything in my head, I took a page from Feynman's playbook and wrote super simple descriptions of the things I have learned. Also keep in mind that during these days, when I got stuck, I actually went through Microsoft's official literature to understand the topics even better. So at the end of the day, it wasn't 100% YouTube, but honestly, I could have watched different YouTube videos and the results would have been likely the same. Next, it was time for some hands-on practice. So I wrote a bunch of random scripts that used all the skills I have recently learned. And when that was done, I've challenged myself to create a small Hangman game inside the Windows console. It was by no means perfect, but it worked, and that felt great. So now, one of the players would write a word, and the rest of the players will take turns trying to guess that word or letters inside of it. So since we learned the basics of C#, it was time to move on to Unity, our game engine. Previously, I mentioned that the game engine is a reality with its own rules, but that's not all. It also has a ton of pre-built functionalities that allow you to manipulate that reality. But the catch here is that all these functionalities have a very specific syntax that you need to learn before you can use them. I like to think of the syntax as incantations for powerful spells that I need to memorize. For example, there's a set of keywords that I can use and the computer will tell me if 2 objects are touching or not. Unfortunately though, I couldn't find a video that covered all the basic functionalities in one go, and that's where things got tough. So I fell down a rabbit hole of random YouTube tutorial videos, and after a couple of days, my brain was fried. I was 10 times more confused than when I started, and here's why. I had collected a million pieces of information, but I was missing everything in between. As a result, I had to try and come up with the connecting pieces myself, and my oh my was I bad at it. So in order to get back on track, I hit the reset button. I made a list of all the things I thought I should learn and began studying from scratch. This time though I had a direction. I had clear goals in mind, which helped with mapping out the steps I needed to take. I had to alternate a lot between watching tutorials and reading through the official literature by Unity, but it was doable. Having said that, cue the montage, boys! So after about 2 weeks of non-stop studying and practicing, I felt I was ready. I fired up my computer and got to writing down ideas for my very own first game. Tara, the Princess of the Wind. So I had the idea for Tara when I was still studying. I didn't really know what the game would be about or how it would play out, but I knew that Tara would be the main character. So I wrote down some basic features and got to work. My vision for Tara was quite simple. As a player, you control a character. Her name is Tara. You can move her around by using the arrow keys, and you can jump by using the spacebar. But wait, there are enemies that you need to defeat. So, you have a sword, and you can attack them. And of course you have a magical ability that you can use to obliterate your enemies and cheat through the game. Oh, and if you kill enough of these bad guys, you will be able to level up and get a power up. And that's about it. So let's get started. First up we have movement. The aim was for the movement to be snappy and feel real nice to control. We kinda got off to a rocky start since the player either floated instead of being affected by gravity, jump too high when running on an inclined platform, or even kinda glided through the air at some point. But once I fixed all of these issues, it was looking pretty good. Right now, I was making my very own game. Okay, problems appeared left and right, but it was my very own game, and I couldn't be happier.
I believe I can fly.
Okay, we fixed the infinite jumps issue and we're back to being happy. But our character is a box, and that's not very cool. So I've made a quick sketch of what I wanted Tara to look like, slapped her onto the box, and ta-da! So at this point Tara refuses to look behind her, but before we can solve that, we need to take a look at her past. Play the flashback.
Daddy, no.
Son, run away, son, save yourself.
But Daddy, I'm your daughter, Daddy. You don't even have a son.
Run, son, run, and never look back. Okay.
So anyway, we had to take Tara to therapy, but finally after years of hard work and counseling, she can once again look behind her. And just between you and me, this counseling thing is the reason that the video came out so late. If anybody tells you that I procrastinated recording the voiceover or editing the video, they are lying. Just blame Tara, not me. Next up, abilities. We needed to give Tara a way to fend for herself, so we gave her a sword. For now it's still on her back and she won't even swing it, but we will fix that later on the graphics portion of the video. So I set out to create a couple of attacks for her, but first she needed a target, and that's why I've created this little dummy right here. Then I designed this attack that basically knocks back enemies and deals damage to them. I also gave Tara an ability that if timed correctly, it would allow her to avoid attacks. I did that because I really wanted to give the player a mechanic that they could master over time and weave it into their playstyle. So I gave her this simple dash that we will build on even more at a later stage. And now, for that magical ability I promised you before, I've created this wind slash thingy, which for the time being is just a ranged projectile attack, but we will also work more on this later. Which brings us to one of the coolest parts of the video. Graphics! And although I'm far from being an artist, I'm somewhat fluent with most of the mainstream graphic design software, so we got that going for us, which is nice. First thing I had to do was create Tara's final design, and as you saw before, I already had this idea of her wearing something resembling Japanese traditional clothing, so I went with it. I've also experimented with some different color schemes, but in the end I just went with the original. After that was done, I had to rig Tara so I could get to animating her. Quick note here, rigging is the process of adding bones to a drawing or a 3D model to turn it into some kind of a digital puppet that you can later on move and animate. So I started out by creating a simple run and attack animation, but since having a single attack felt a little bit unnatural, I gave her a second attack as well. Now Tara can alternate between attack animation 1 and attack animation 2 for a more natural feeling. Then I've created an animation for her dash ability. And of course a cast animation for when Tara shoots her magical ability. And to make that ability more interesting, we now have charging. The more you charge the ability, the stronger it gets. With the graphics for Tara's abilities out of the way, it was time to start working on the environment. And that's why I drew up some happy trees so Tara could have a few friends. Surprisingly enough, they didn't turn out too bad. For the leaves, I've used a custom brush that I've made after watching a couple of tutorials on the matter, which I then layered behind and on top of the tree base. I've also added some highlights on the leaves to make them stand out more and give them some dimensionality. Now I didn't know how to draw a tree trunk yet, so they're still pretty bad, but we will give them a makeover once we get to the second graphics pass. For now, we are moving on. Let's add the sky. And with that, things are looking pretty good with the environment, so let's go back to Tara. Her moveset was almost complete, but she still didn't have a jump animation, so I gave her one. And on top of that, I wrote a script that would check if Tara is actually jumping or falling, and then play the corresponding animation. And then I changed my mind and scrapped the whole Wind Priestess concept because the Wind Slash didn't feel quite as epic as I have imagined. So I decided to make her Tara, the Protector of Light, instead. And I gave her a laser beam. Now Tara has all these things she can do, but no one to do them with. So... enemy! Okay, so I've designed this regrettable deranged evil Furby, and my only thought for its design was that I wanted it to look like some kind of a shadowy creature, I guess. Of course that would mean nothing if it wasn't actually moving, so I gave this little guy a few disturbingly cute animations. I mean, look at him, don't you just want to hug him while he's ripping your guts out? I know I do. Let's see how it works when placed in the environment. I'm sure he won't have any issues though. so I had to write this small piece of code just to keep this dark poop emoji with a beak from drifting out of control. On a totally unrelated note, I've hired this inconspicuous and definitely not evil gardener to trim the bushes and cut the grass. Wait, we have grass now. Okay, I made this evil gardener follow us around. Isn't this exciting? Look at him go! I even taught him to detect objects around him and calculate if he can jump over them. If he can, he will. Otherwise, he will just stay there. Isn't he smart? Also, this behavior is never used in the game. I don't know why I made it. And now for the moment of truth. If this combination between an owl and the lint that comes out of your belly button gets too close to you, it will stop an attack. Of course, it would have been incredibly annoying if it continued attacking non-stop, so I gave him a small pause between attacks. I also gave Tara a health stat and made her flash red whenever she got damaged in order for the player to understand that they have been hit. Oh, and also at this point I gave her an invulnerability window that essentially allows her to pass through attacks when dodging. But one enemy is never enough. So I made another one. Now there's this weird snake dragon dog thingy that spits at you. He's a heavy smoker, that's why his spit is black. Don't think about it too much. Now for variety reasons we have two main differences between the two enemies. One is that the dragon snake thingy cannot move, and two is that it can attack you from a distance. So now you have to come up with a strategy. Do you want to go for the immobile ranged enemy first, or do you want to go after the one chasing you? I spent about 2 hours of my life trying to make the speed attack work, so here's the very ugly custom code that I wrote, and here's how it works. Yep, if you get directly below or above it, it would spit at you with the power of 1000 suns. Then with a little bit more research, I found a method that does exactly what I needed to do with just a few keywords. Remember the functionalities that I told you earlier? Yeah, there's a million of them. So now everything should work just fine. Pay no attention to the speedball stopping in the middle of nowhere. I will fix that later. So graphics number 2. Now that we have almost everything that we need, it's time to make things beautiful. So I made my own wood brush and used that to create more realistic tree trunks for our trees. I also recolored the leaves to make them look like sakura trees. After that I've also designed a few leaf platforms that are barely even visible, so Tara can jump on them and reach the mean black anaconda dogs. I then refined the background and added some fading blur to give it some sense of depth. And finally, I've added a health bar that tracks your health and experience as you play. And now that we have a way to track our experience, it was time to create a leveling system with a few power-ups. The idea here is that every time you level up, you will get 3 random power-ups to choose from. Your options are a movement speed bonus, an attack damage bonus, an attack speed bonus, a magical ability damage bonus, a magical ability cooldown reduction, a dodge cooldown reduction, extra jumps, and in some very rare occasions, a special power-up that will give you a little bit of everything. And since we were at it, I made a pause screen as well. And now on to the final touches. I wanted a way to stop the player from just running non-stop to the end goal, so I've made this barrier that would prevent you from going any further before dealing with the current encounter. Upon clearing said encounter, the barrier disappears and it drops a few orbs that either give you health, or in case you are not injured, they give you XP instead. I wanted to create a boss too, but that was a lot of work and I was a little bit out of time, so I've made the mini boss instead by massing the 2 enemies together. Finally, I made a finish goal that when touched would display a "you win" message along with the time it took for the level to be completed, and a grade to tell you how terribly you did. I've also added some basic instructions on how to play the game, and finally all the elements were ready. Now the only thing left to do was to arrange these elements in a simple proof of concept level. And I'm actually extremely happy with the results. It's really close to what I had in mind for this exercise, and I still can't believe that in the span of 3 weeks we went from this to this to this. I will keep on working on this one for a little while longer, so maybe go ahead and join me on Instagram. I will be asking for your input there. For example, I will be asking for ideas on what our next boss should look like. And in the next video you might even see your ideas come to life. And if you want to and all goes well, you might even be able to play the game. And now, for your viewing pleasure only, I have forced some of my friends to suffer through my terrible and unnecessarily difficult game. I hope you enjoy their suffering as much as I did. Let's go!
So I just press play, huh? Play.
So, I'm Leon. My friend asked me to play the game that he created. This is really exciting. It looks beautiful. I just want to jump into the game right now.
Okay, I will play.
God damn.
You don't need your mouse, so you don't have to hold it. So I'll just need to have my keyboard. So I can move left, I can move right. If I move left too much, I just go to the abyss.
Press QD //.
Actually, the animation is too smooth. Oh, there's a double jump. I don't need to go and fight anyone. This is fun.
Press E to dodge. Oh, it's like okay, it's like a dash, but you dodge as well.
I don't know if this deals more damage if you double Q with the different animations. Someone is coming! I didn't learn to dodge! I'll knife you! I'll knife you in the bathroom!
I attack this guy. He died. Easy.
And we can charge a light beam. Oh! I'll try it again. Oh, there's a cooldown.
Oh, that's up and left. That's a cooldown, I assume. Yeah, that's the cooldown.
Someone is throwing stones. Don't throw stones, I'm not the Satan. Run, Muslim boy. Dodge it.
Okay, I charge. I double jump, I shoot. I took a little bit of damage.
These snake things is they are ugly. But I kill them too, so it's fine.
Oh, there is a power up. Wait. I will fight you later. Let's press L. Let's press L. Lethal Strike, Hermes Blessing, and Omni Flash. All right. Light Step cool. This is so cool. Significantly improved. Significantly.
I'm not gonna be a pussy no more. Yeah. Okay, it's dead. Oh, those are potions.
Let's see. Swift Strike. More attacks, more damage.
Oh my god, it has an experience system as well. This is so good. Ah! Fight me! They're throwing stones! Run, Mohammed! Terra! Run, Terra!
Oh, I dodge. I dodge. I'm kiting those guys. Pretty well. I'm kiting those guys pretty well.
Oh, more enemies. I will kill them, no problem. Oh.
Dodge, Terra, dodge! We don't wanna die!
Oh! God damn it. Okay, we'll try again.
Okay.
This is fun, this is not... Goblin.
Like this? Whoa, let's go, dude. Hell yeah. Oh, wait. These are platforms? I didn't even realize.
Oh my god, I'm the best player ever.
The enemies from up above are strong. So I will take hippity hoppity. More jumps. More jumps.
Oh no! What was that? No! Oh, back off! Yeah. I did it
again! Oh my god, they all dead. I swear to god.
Ooh.
Come fight me, I'll fight you. Ooh!
Oh no, I can't get hit now. And it's actually pretty fun because it's actually like kind of hard.
Look, this is a good game, Ares. You created an amazing game that I couldn't finish. You told me it was gonna be 5 minutes. It's not. I really wanted to see the end, man. But I can't, because I suck at this. But I love you. I love you in my heart.
Disqualified.
How do I get there? Ah, yes, easy. Not so easy. Who designed this game? Oh, yes, I did. Psych. This was a little bit meta, but okay.
Wait, if you hit something with your W ability, you get the bar charge or... Oh, that's the bust! Your game is bugged, bro. Oh, he does a lot of damage. Oh. I'm not gonna lie, I disrespect this guy. That's it for me because I'm tired of this game, man. I'm tired of this. This game sucks. Okay.
Disqualified.
Oh, hey, this is final boss, I guess. I don't wanna test his damage. No, I ain't doing that shit. I just tested his damage, yeah.
Easiest game of my life. Another level up. Attack even faster. Oh, I'm ninja now. Ninja. More enemies, but I attack fast. So that's good. Okay. Let me fix my Chemberry because it's going away.
I guess he will never die. How tanky is this thing? Oh, finally. I got a B. Pretty cool game.
Can I kill these up here? Yes. Ah, no, never mind. Just attack him very fast. He knows. How much health does this guy have? He's too strong. More level. Give me movement speed. Look at me. I am the speed. Gotta go fast. I don't know any other speed memes. Deja vu. I have been in this place before.